The question is, agricultural growth planning has a component of environmental cost. Discuss. Now, there are three aspects of this question. The first is agricultural comprehension of the question. What exactly does this question mean? And second is that it is discussed. Now, it means basically that you have to go by point discussion of it. This is basically what discussion means. It's not analyze, although analysis is a higher form of explanation. So picking up the first one, that is the comprehension of the question. That's the first thing that you require to know. There is any type of agricultural growth planning that you do is responsible for some amount of environmental damage. That means you have to pay some type of an environmental cost in order to do any type of agricultural growth. So any planning is going to be associated with some type of a cost that we have to pay to the environment in terms of anything you can go to think. Now, having said that, having talked about the comprehension of it, the answer will go on to begin with an introduction. It's discussed, so an introduction is required in this case here. And this introduction will go on to mean, first is what exactly is the meaning of agricultural growth. Now, agricultural growth basically entails and means that we are talking about the growth of agriculture. That means manifested in productivity, manifested in production, manifested in something that you're going to see tangible. Maybe that it goes on to harm certain things as well. This is part of economic growth. So economic growth basically goes on to mean that whether you go on to pollute the environment, you are increasing the GDP. Whether you're going to take care of the pollution, you are increasing the GDP. Whether you're going to manufacture everything that is responsible for polluting the environment will also going to increase GDP. Whether people go on to meet an accident because of such type of pollution, that is increasing GDP. When you go to control this accident, that also goes on to increase the GDP. When you are responsible for managing it with the help of a machinery, that also goes on to increase GDP. So agriculture growth also goes on to be meaning the same. That means in every component of it, there is some amount of finance involved. There is some amount of a figure that is involved. And some of those places where figure is involved, that is not always going to be very, very good from an environmental angle. Now, contrary to it, agriculture development will go on to mean that it is having some element of a development. We are talking about some element of sustainability, some element of environment, some element of localization, some element of local wisdom, some element of not harming the people, some element of taking everyone together. That is agriculture development. So it is talking about agriculture growth, and its manifestation is clearly in terms of two things: production and productivity. Whether to produce maybe 70,000 quintals of any type of a crop in any given unit. Let's say you have an agricultural field and it is about 1 hectare, and you produce 70 quintals of it. And the cost of this 70 quintals is going to be something like some 1.5 lakh rupees. 1.5 lakh rupees is production as well, both of them. And the cost of it is not included by talking about the input cost. For example, the input cost may be 1.1 lakh rupees. But then that is not included. That means agriculture growth goes on to take into account certain tangible aspects. This is what exactly is the meaning of the first part. Now coming to the second part of it, so components of agriculture growth will go on to include seeds. So the use of seeds and their environmental impact. That's the first thing that we are going to be talking about. We say that is an introduction to that effect is significant. Second is going to be the impact of seeds. Now seeds means when you are going to be talking about some traditional seeds and some of the seeds that don't have an environmental impact and you can go to manage it, then you don't incur too much amount of a cost, but the production is also not going to be very, very high. Now it may be that you go on to use some high yielding varieties. That is what we go on to be doing it mostly, high yielding varieties. These high yielding varieties are not high yielding in themselves. They are high yielding not in themselves. They are high yielding only in response to certain type of inputs. And what exactly are these inputs? These inputs include, these inputs basically go on to comprise of certain things like use of fertilizers, use of irrigation water, use of pesticides, use of machinery, use of what not and what not, right? Now, all of them go on to be having certain type of impact. These seeds will go on to they simplify the ecosystem to a large extent, to such an extent that they're going to get affected by pest attack, they're going to get affected by simplification of the ecosystem, and then there is en masse epidemic associated with it. They are also associated with necessary use of fertilizer. So, when you go on to use these seeds and simplify the ecosystem, in the sense that is you have merged and fused the characteristic of many high yielding varieties in one or many crops in one, that will go on to mean simplification. That will also go on to mean that when you have simplified it, you have to pay certain type of a price in terms of epidemic attack, in terms of pest attack, in terms of the use of fertilizers, in terms of use of huge amount of water, in terms of changing the cropping pattern, in terms of allowing this agriculture to be suited by certain type of maybe not local people, maybe some alien elements. Second is going to be irrigation. Irrigation has its impact, and when we going to talk about irrigation as an impact, then basically it comprises of the impact associated with waterlogging. When you're going to provide irrigation, and if it has been indiscriminate type of an irrigation, then that is going to be associated with waterlogging. Then that is going to be also associated not only with waterlogging, with certain type of pollutants that the irrigation water can go to take. Maybe if you are using the irrigation water a bit too much, then they'll go to cause a reversible decline in the water table as well. Maybe when you are going to be talking about the use of the wells, you will go to dry the well too, and in reversible extent as well. Maybe when you are going to be using irrigation water and you use it in unjudiciously, then what you do is you allow a thin film of salt to be onto the surface. And this thin film of salt that is going to be on the surface, that will go on to have its own impact. And that impact is going to be completely different. It's different in many terms. And how exactly is it going to be different? That is, it will go on to cause salinization. So irrigation goes on to be having its attendant impact in terms of lowering the water table, salinization, bringing good number of pollutants in that place, and so on. Third is fertilizer and its environmental impact. When we are talking about fertilizer and its environmental impact, basically it means chemical fertilizers. Biofertilizers don't go to be having such type of impact. A fertilizer goes on to become essentially to provide nutrients to the seeds to grow faster. Now, when you go on to use high yielding varieties and you don't go on to be using fertilizers, then seeds, high yielding varieties, as we talked about, are not high yielding in themselves. So their impact is that they will go on to compact the soil. Their impact is they will go on to cause eutrophication in that region. The impact of the fertilizer is that they will go on to cause the pollution of the groundwater and a permanent degradation of the groundwater, which people may go on to drink, and they will go to get affected by cancer and so many things. So that has some environmental impact. Of course, you're going to manage it. Ultimately, all in all, we are talking about growth, and growth means that is the increase in the production and productivity. Pesticides go on to be having their own environmental impact that way. And the impact of pesticides is that most of these pesticides go on to remain as residues in the environment, and that they are non-biodegradable. If it is that the chemical pesticides are being used, then that allows most of these microorganisms, which are not targeted organisms. When you're going to use pesticide, you don't go to differentiate between good organism and bad organism, targeted organism and non-targeted organism. You go to talk about all the type of organism that destroys. And some of these good organisms also going to get destroyed, and there is no way that you can go to take care of it. That is one impact. Second is that of course it pollutes the soil. Third is that of course it contaminates the groundwater. The fourth is that it of course goes on to kill a lot of organisms which will go on to decrease the biodiversity in that region, and that goes on to make it more and more pest attack, more and more prone to the pest attack as well. Then mechanization goes on to be having its own impact. The use of certain things like tractor, the use of some of these things like all the type of machines that you're going to be using in a rural environment, in an agrarian environment, in an agriculture environment, has this attendant impacts, and that impact is associated with a lot of degradation, and this degradation is going to be associated with the blowing away of the soil in that region, the residues of the tractors that are going to be left, the oil and the mobile that goes on to rinse out of it, and of course it also is going to be associated with pollution in the rural areas as well. And any type of a mechanization comes along with a price that one has to pay. So whether you go on to use seeds, fertilizer, irrigation, pesticides, mechanization, or any new type of management technology, it has this attendant impact in the sense that it goes on to increase the overall environmental cost. The price that you have to pay to the environment goes on to increase. But that is the price that you always going to pay for growth. The moment you're going to convert it into development, it goes on to become sustainable, it goes on to be good for everyone concerned, and so on, so forth. That becomes your conclusion now.
To have more such discussions and analysis, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for notifications on our upcoming videos.